Hello, and welcome to the Call for Help show. I'm your host, attorney Paul Rebein. We are live on Facebook. Can you hear me? Uh, we're
You're
live.
breaking a little.
I'm attorney Paul Rebein, episode 10 of the Call for Help show, live on Facebook today, being replayed on WTMP radio tomorrow, and also available as a podcast. Also with me in the studio are my co-host, Robin Lockett, who was gone last week. How are you, Robin?
Hi,
Welcome back. And
thank you.
Pastor Brenda Fruster. How are you, Brenda?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Good. We are honored today to have a very special guest, uh, Dr. Sherry Yu. She's a professor of economics at New College of Florida. And we're going to talk with Dr. Yu about some of the economic issues going on in our community, in particular the shortages or some of the issues going on. How are you, Dr. Yu?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me to come here. It's an honor
Yeah.
to be here.
Yes, this is really like my first real conversation with an economist. So
Well, more honored.
I typically
Welcome.
I always think of economists as being like old men. So it's refreshing to see somebody
Well,
younger.
I take that as a compliment.
So let's get into it. I've read a lot about issue going on with the supply chain. I guess some people call it a disruption. Well, how would you characterize what's going on with the supply chain?
Yeah, I think disruption is a great term because we think disruptions as a short-term interference in the balance of the market. So I think it's a global supply chain disruption, not just affecting our local area.
And can you just, for our listeners, just break down what that means? Like what's happening and why is it happening?
So I'm pretty sure people have been noticing empty shelves, higher gas prices. Many of the items that you want to have are constantly out of stock, and you need to wait a longer time for getting furniture delivered, appliances delivered. So it's been more obvious lately with every sector of your life being affected. So the global supply chain has become more integrated over the past several decades. So we could have maybe one chair that has 15 components coming from 15 countries. And so that has become more efficient in terms of the production mechanism. So we could have outsourcing, we could have lower prices because of the global supply chain integration. But that just puts more pressure on terms of the delicacy of the system. So if the 15 components, one breaks down, you won't have a chair. So that's how sensitive we are to the functionality of the global supply chain. So right now we have different parts of the world still going on with their struggle with COVID. And so US is becoming more and more normal, but we do have, Asian countries, some African countries still under lockdown order or having excessive restrictions on the flow of goods. And so that affects how our goods gets delivered around the world, and ultimately consumers are going to get that impact.
Got it. Here's some, and guys, jump in and invite our listeners to comment if you have things that you've noticed you can't find anymore. The one I've noticed is my grandkids drink these little juices in like plastic things you stick a straw in it. And in Publix, that you just can't find them, or there'll only be one or two, but you'll see a huge empty space. And I'm like, why would that be? I mean, are people hoarding those or they just can't make enough? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't have specific comments on those, but I do know firms how they make decisions. So when they are in sort of a shortage type of sitting with raw materials being in a concern, or with their labor shortage potentially, they would prioritize production of the goods that have the highest contribution margin. So whatever that's making the most money for them, they're going to prioritize them. So
Okay.
You're not only noticing empty shelf, but you're noticing that some products with 10 flavors before now only sells one flavor. And that's exactly how they are trying to manage profit while dealing with a disruption like this.
Yep.
So, this whole dynamic has really opened my eyes, right? Because I see barges out in the ocean just sitting there, and it really made me realize how much we are depending upon others to make things work here in America. So it make me question now, made in America. Is it just assembled in America? Because the parts are not American, and
Right.
how many jobs and so forth are being lost because of that. But it's just amazing how much stuff is outsourced, and that we're dependent upon all of that outsources to make one component. You used the analogy of a chair earlier. We can't sit if we don't have one of the legs that's coming from somewhere else, and that's just amazing to me.
And it's becoming more, well, as a macroeconomist, we always promote for international trade. International trade should be, we say mutually beneficial, but in this case, it's beyond mutual. It's multilateral beneficial. So many countries are different, right? So they're different in their raw materials, they're different in their labor and capital endowments, they're different in their technology or whatever policies that's guiding the economy going forward. So we take advantage of that. And we have taken advantage of that and without thinking what is going to be the risk. And so we have sitting there in a comfort zone thinking, I'm just going to order on Amazon and things get delivered to me in 2 days without thinking about behind those 2 days, who is working and what steps have gone through. And so we were really spoiled and, privileged with the convenience, everything it has given to us. And now this is a wake-up call and say, hey, things go beyond you putting an online order takes a second, but really behind it, there are 15 countries involved.
Statistically, are individuals buying more products or consuming more than they did, say, 10 years ago, just because it's so easy to go on Amazon and do a couple of clicks and then it shows up at your door?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, personally, for example, my parents had this vacuum that I remember lasted 20 years. So they had huge vacuum with a long pipe, a tube. And we were using that since I was a kid until I went to college. And then recently we've replaced at least 3 Dyson vacuums in a span of 5 years.
Yep.
And none of them broke. It was just new ones came out.
Yeah, my mom has an alarm clock that I swear is 40, 50 years old. I remember it from when I was a little kid, but she's like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. I guess I guess our attention span is a little bit less now, and people just are just buying more junk than they used to.
But with that same notation, so with that same idea with the clock and the vacuum cleaner, is the quality different?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that what the quality? Is it? Do you think the quality is different? I don't know if that's a.
Oh yeah, I believe I was saying the same thing, Robin, in my head as they were talking. The quality of service we no longer receive it as consumers that we once were. Even with some of the companies that have been around 50, 60 years, they don't produce the quality that they used to, yet the prices have increased. So the quality is where we're losing it at.
What about prices, Doctor? Prices seem to be going up. Is that true?
I mean, the core CPI is approaching 5%, meaning that the essential products that you see are on average 5% more expensive than the same time last year. But we have to understand that second quarter of GDP grew 6.7%. So you can say that the price increases are funneled by economic expansion because second quarter is the summer, right? Summer is the best time to go out, and since putting the pandemic behind us. So we did see a very strong summer, but we're a little bit concerned as economists going forward because the third quarter only reported 0.5% growth for GDP. With the 5% inflation, it doesn't look good.
So for
So
those
let me-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Robin. Go ahead.
For those that don't understand what GDP is or CPI, could you explain that?
Yeah, excuse me. So GDP is gross domestic production. So it's essentially just the total volume of the products that we produce times their price. And so that would be the entire income, or essentially we call it output, that is produced in the United States. So we had a very strong second quarter from April to June. The United States has seen income growth of 6.7%. That's what it is. But yeah,
So
from
if
July
we-
to September, October, it's more flat.
If we were to compare the first quarter of 2020 with the first quarter of, if we compared the first quarter of 2021 with the first quarter of 2019 before the pandemic, would the GDP, was it more before the pandemic, or have we continued to grow despite the pandemic?
We have grown. So we did have a 30% decline in the second quarter of 2020. So that was the sharp decline, but it quickly rebounded by the end of 2020. And since I think first quarter, when the vaccine was rolled out, we were on par. So we resumed the output in the first quarter of 2021 to the pre-pandemic level. And then since that, it has been growing.
Do you think that the unemployment benefits and the stimulus payments save the economy or help the economy?
It depends on where you're looking at. So for workers, yes, definitely, because what we do is to promote consumption smoothing. So it is okay to have recession. Recession is not something horrific, but what it brings is the consequences burden upon individuals. So for example, our decisions are not going to be easily adjusted. You don't move from a big house to a small house overnight because you had a change of job condition. And so because of that, we want this consumption, which is your spending, to be as smooth as possible. So with the disruption of the pandemic and the, sort of the economic shocks, we call economic shocks, surprises in the economy, those definitely help the workers to balance their life and to try to minimize the negative impact on them. But ongoing, when the economy is resuming its activities, that becomes a challenge because it becomes an added cost for people to go back to work. Because now when they think about whether I should go back, they don't think about $20 an hour they make. They're thinking I'm going to lose the unemployment benefit plus, the new wages I'm going to. So it increased their cost to go back to work.
Wow.
Interesting.
So yeah. So go Paul.
How about Florida? How are we doing economically compared to other states?
I think comparatively, we are lucky. So we're warm and we are a popular tourist attraction state. And so over the summer, we have seen strong economic growth in Florida, especially summer of 2021, when people are starting to travel. And international barriers has made people to delay traveling internationally. So where else can they turn? They come to us.
Yes. Interesting. What about, we were talking before the show about housing, the housing costs increasing, and we've talked about that on the show in the past. What do you see happening in Florida in terms of rents rising? Number one, why is that happening? And number two, what could be done to alleviate that problem?
That's a great question. So I think it's negatively affecting people who already live in Florida. So if you think about it, right? So in 2020, many people were forced to work from home. And so my husband's a realtor, so he knew this upfront. So he had clients from Manhattan, New York, or San Francisco, or other locations where they suddenly were able to work from home. And so he had this client who pays $4,000 for a 500 square foot apartment in Manhattan, trying to relocate to Florida. And he was showing them this house, beautiful house in Lake Ranch, in the Brandon area, and it was $1,800. It was 2,000 square feet with a pool. And so that client was over the roof thinking about, this is the life that I need to be living right now. If you can't leave your house, you need to have space, right?
Yes.
So I think that adds the demand on the Florida housing market. But at the same time, our supply is not keeping up. The new housing start has been low. We had lumber price increase dramatically over the summer, and we had a lot of the construction labor shortage. So we're not seeing the supply to increase to fulfill those excessive demands. And the result is higher rent and higher housing price.
So why did the lumber price increase? That's not something we're getting from overseas. It's not something that you would produce in a factory, I guess. You could do it outside, I would think. Why did that go up?
If you think about it, workers were being laid off for some over a year, some 6 months or more, and they need to readjust to life. So many of the workers, when the pandemic first started, housing was limited. So there were very little construction activities, and there were temporarily halting, all of the new projects that they were going to consume. So two pressures. One is suddenly when it reopens, everybody wants to resume the project. Plus, you have this backlog of orders that are unfulfilled. And so that's number one. Number two is labor have already found jobs somewhere else, and they need time to make them come back and rework in the same environment. And many people refuse to do so because of other responsibilities that they have taken on during the period that they were laid off.
Okay. What about, I was reading an article that the cost of chicken has gone up dramatically, and that, bars that serve chicken wings or whatever can't get chicken wings or raising their price. What's going on there? Why would that be happening?
Are you seeing more price hikes around us? I mean, to me personally, I don't think in my local market I'm seeing similar.
Unfortunately,
effect.
I am not a good
grocery
economist.
shop.
I do, but I don't pay attention to how much anything costs. I'll come home with the groceries, and my wife will say, "Well, how much was it?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." I guess that's a luxury to have, but no, I don't pay attention.
That's a luxury. That you don't look at prices. So own it. Yeah, that's good.
But Robin and Brenda, do you feel there is a local effect around us?
I think so. I think that as Paul has indicated, that when I do look at the prices of different items, I do see I'm looking at them and saying, well, darn, it costs this much. Even the luxury of crab legs in the store, snow crabs, you can catch those on sale for at least $10. Now, just consistently, they're $13, $15, $17, So, and that's a consistent, because you can normally catch them on sale. But I think that the prices have increased a tad bit. How much, I don't know, but I know that they have.
I know that it's gone up tremendously. I shared with you a couple of days ago, we were talking, being a military family. So we go to the commissary, and I am able to compare the, let's say, the chicken wings that Paul was talking about. I can get a good family size, let's say, for between $6 and $8. But then I go to my local store, and the package, which is much smaller, is $20. It's $21. It's $25. And I'm like, dang. But also in that shortage, there's a sign that's located in the meat department. We are short of chicken wings. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, all the chickens out there, you mean to tell me you're short of chicken wings? But there, there's a twofold here: short of chicken wings, and yet the price is astronomical.
But are we eating more chicken, or they're just not being produced as much?
I have a question that you might want to relate to your purchases before. If you ever see something says limit 2 items per family, and you only wanted to purchase one when you went in, would you then end up grabbing 2?
Yes.
So if you can relate to that, then
What about the buy one get one free? I always get one, but I always wonder if I just got one, would it be half the price of the regular one, or would it be the same cost as buying 2?
No, I think they charge you the regular price of the one, and if you buy 2, that's you get the discount of
Zero,
buy one
yeah.
get one free.
Have you have this is not an economic issue, but have you ever not gotten something because it was buy one get one free? Like I was going to get this bag of potato chips, and it was buy one get one free, and I was like, I'm not supposed to be eating these potato chips anyway. I cannot have 2 bags of these potato chips in my house, so I'm not getting either. Have you
Impulse buying, guilty of that. Very guilty of that.
No, I buy the 2 and eat the one later. So
yeah. I mean, going back to your original question, yes, I think if you look at what has increased most in terms of prices, those are going to be the one requiring more attention for transportation as well as more labor-intensive production. So what labor-intensive means is that it takes more people to actually get this delivered. So if you think about meat, it is probably the most labor-intensive product we can purchase on a daily basis, because when you imagine meat production facilities, it's lines and lines of workers all stacked together, each dissecting a chicken or washing it and then packaging it. So it is very labor intensive, and those have been seen with the most price increase. Plus, refrigeration for trucks have already been scarce, because you have all these food items that you need to actually have what's it called, reefer trucks, which are a special kind of trucks. When you have shortages of trucks, let alone those trucks, right? And so that becomes added to the consumers. And also with the purchases, excessive purchases, people see limit 2 per family, they grab 2 even if they just want 1. So that's one thing. And I also see large companies are grabbing whatever they can right now because they are anticipating a price increase. So they're maximizing their order, and that squeezes out little players in this market. So there's a disproportional market power there.
So should we be worried? Should we be worried about inflation? Should we be worried about the economy crashing? Or what's the outlook in your opinion?
I think economic crashing would be a very pessimistic term. I would not go down that route, but I am going to warn people around us that we talk about prices. I think the prices are going to stay permanently high for the following reason. So when you have already a supply surprise, so there's a supply shock that we call, which temporarily increases the cost of production. Firms are eager to increase their prices because they react to the increase of costs. When that's happening, what should be naturally occurring is that firms are charging temporarily higher prices, and that decreases people's demand for products, and then that demand will drive away those excessive shortage, and gradually it will die down and the price will resume. But at the same time, when we had this back in 2020, we not only had a cost shock, we also had the Fed and also the government trying to promote fiscal policy, which means that there's giving large stimulus packages, and the central bank is lowering the interest rate to nearly 0. So what that adds is additional money available in this economy. Money leads to additional demand. So on one side, you have decreasing supply due to higher costs, but on the other side, you have this dramatic increase in demand, not only because of after COVID, but also because of the expansionary policy. So these two do not go together well. This leads to a permanent effect onto our prices.
So how many people, I guess companies that you just mentioned something in regards to temporary prices. How many companies do you know that raises prices and then lower them on the for the good of their not their constituents, their the people that purchase those prices. Because now I think a lot of times people will be upset about, darn, this chicken costs $5 now or $10 now, and then because they need it, it becomes a norm, and then the prices just stay up there.
That's a great observation. So yes, if you look at wages do not go down easily. And we're seeing that McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts are hiring people at $15 an hour. And don't just look at it as a sign. What it does is not only newly hired people getting $15 an hour, which is double the federal minimum wage, but existing workers, they won't take $10 an hour anymore. If I know someone who hired after me gets 15, I'm going to get 15 and more, right? So it is across the board increase for labor costs, and that's unfolded and packed into consumer prices. So it won't become a temporary thing. It will stay permanently, at least that part.
So you made a great observation in regards to wages, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and she was like, they're going to bring these wages in, like I think she said some company was bringing in like paying $19 an hour, and then the manager of that fast food company will be making like within 3 years would making over $100,000. So she was thinking that they would bring them in high and then lower the wages. I said no. People will walk off because of that. You can't pay people a certain amount and then turn around and take their wages or their income from them. But in regards to the organization, I'm saying organizations, in regards to the companies that's raising wages, do you think that that's going to be sustainable, be consistent across the board for them to keep them that way?
Unless they have massive layoffs, which can reset the market. And in that case, we're talking about detrimental recessions in this economy. Otherwise, I think wages will be very hard to lower.
What about, and you think the rents will continue to stay at the same level and higher?
I think gradually housing starts should kick in. We're seeing massive constructions of apartment buildings. So in Florida, it's rare to see apartments, but now we see more and more. I don't know if that happens around you, but like same complex building is built on every block.
Yeah.
And so I think that should alleviate somewhat of the pressure. And as the whole country opens up and international travel opens up, I think we will have less inflow of relocators from other states, and so that could make the temporary hike in demand a little bit better.
Interesting.
They try to justify it. And I guess in regards to the wages again, when employers raise the rate to Walmart, they're raising the rate, but they're not paying. They're just using it as part-time, just giving people part-time work.
Yeah.
What's the rationale behind that? I
know it. Benefits. Yeah, you know it, right?
Yeah.
Firms are smart, and especially I think firms are being careful in terms of uncertainty. So when they have decision-making processes that are forward-looking, meaning that they have to think into the future, they're not sure what's going to happen within a year. Is there going to be a recession? Is there going to be policy adjustments? What is the COVID coming back? So with all that uncertainty, I think locking them into full-time employment would be hard, because they have to pay benefits, which is usually 20-30% of their salary. So they're being strategic of using part-time workers and offering some cash payments, some high wages to lure them in, and giving them sign-on bonuses, and think as a temporary compromise in exchange for long-term strategic planning.
So who would have thought that something bad like the pandemic could result in something good like wages increasing, where in the past they were stagnant?
Yeah, this is the power of economic shocks that, many people say, why didn't you predict the recession in 2008? And, what is something wrong with the economic profession that, for 100 years, you're not able to predict what the economy is going to go. The answer is no, we can't. And there is no way that we can foresee a pandemic like this. And there is no timing of what's going to happen next. But what I do know is I have full faith in the Federal Reserve System. I think the chairman and his subordinates are going to make the right decisions to mitigate what the negative consequences to the economy will be.
Dr. Yu, thank you so much. And I'm sorry our time has come to an end. But I want
have
to
a great
thank you.
time.
You're the most interesting economist I've ever met. So
I
thank you for
appreciate
being
that.
on the show, and thank you for what you're doing, teaching the students. And we will see everyone back here next week on the Call for Help show.
Thank you, Paul.